As some of you know, I'm very fond of time-lapses and hyperlapses of all kinds. And of course, I'm a bit of a nut for drones. So it is not surprising that I'm very interested in time-lapses and hyperlapses made with drones. The hyperlapse function has been introduced by DJI in the Mavic Air 2 series, the 2 Pro and the 2 Zoom. It has been revamped and improved with the Mavic Air 2, which had become my go-to drone for hyperlapses. But I was not satisfied with the way this function was implemented, and I pointed out several possible improvements. Since the Air 2S seems to do everything very well, let's see if the hyperlapse function has been improved. I really can't wait to test it, so let's get going. Like in previous models, we access the hyperlapse mode in the photo-video menu above the shutter. After we choose hyperlapse, we are presented with the usual 4 modes: free, circle, course lock and waypoints. To save the files to the memory disk, we need to tap on the icon Format. We have a choice for the resolution of the automatically made movie between 1080p and 4K. And in the line below we can choose to save the files either as JPEG or as RAW. The new layout is quite handy once we get used to it, as we can quickly access it, while in previous versions we have to go back and forth to the setting pages. Notice that the so-called 8K mode that was available in the Air 2 is not there anymore. To be honest, it will not be missed, as it never worked properly and the 4K mode was much better anyway. A very important factor to achieve good quality in time-lapses or hyperlapses is the correct amount of motion blur. If we want to get a smooth movement in the moving parts, we should aim to set the shutter speed at 1 second when using an interval of 1 shot every 2 seconds. A shutter speed of 1.5 seconds with a shot every 3 seconds. And 2 seconds for a shot every 4 seconds, and so on. When shooting hyperlapses with a drone, the interval between each shot is limited by the battery life. Assuming that we want the length of the final movie to be 12 seconds, 1 shot every 3 seconds will take 15 minutes. If we have the time to move to the starting point, set up the shot and come back home, an interval longer than 3 seconds will be risky. Drones are not as stable as cameras sitting on a sturdy tripod, and such a slow shutter speed would cause unwanted blurring, so we have to compromise. I find that in low wind a shutter speed of 1/5 of a second gives good results with a well-calibrated drone, and we can still get a decent amount of motion blur in the moving elements. But if we use such a slow shutter speed during the day, the image would be heavily overexposed. This is why ND filters are needed for all photo hyperlapses. They simply reduce the amount of light entering the shutter, so that we can use the desired speed. The Air 2S combo comes with a set of ND filters perfectly suited for hyperlapses, with values ranging from ND64 to ND512. They can also be purchased separately if you did not go for the combo, or from third parties. Make sure to choose a set of similar strength. Motion blur is the single most important variable to nail for outstanding hyperlapses. I suggest watching my dedicated video about it. You will find a link at the end of this video and in the description below. The free mode is often considered the poor relative, and often dismissed as the least spectacular. I will analyze it very quickly here, as I will go more in depth on an upcoming video about time lapses with the Air 2S, as this is the method I use for static time lapse, where the point of view, the drone, doesn't move, or just advance at very low speed. Until now, this mode was the only one allowing changes in altitude and direction at low speed, so I found it often useful, but this was before the Air 2S revolution, as we will see later. I would like to go to the same location where I have tested the Hyperlapse mode for the Mavic 2 Pro and for the Mavic Air 2, but my car broke down and refused to cooperate. Traitor, you can't trust anyone these days. But Mount Etna wanted to be part of the show. The light is horrible, we are in the middle of a huge heat wave here in Sicily at the end of June. So it is extremely hazy. Mount Etna is very visible, and I cannot even see the difference between the sea and the sky. In this case, I had to push post-processing to an extreme level to get some sort of contrast and visibility. But in a way it is a good test for the raw file of the Air 2S, and they behaved extremely well. I managed to get something from an impossible situation. Course lock is a very useful and versatile mode. First of all, we set the direction of flight simply by pointing the drone to the direction we want to fly to, and then pressing on the first icon to the left, unblock direction, which will turn yellow and will read lock direction. We can now rotate the camera and choose a target by drawing a box around it with a finger. The camera will remain locked to that target while we move towards the desired direction. In other words, the camera will move independently from the direction of flight, allowing us to show the surroundings of our target in an interesting way. If we don't specify a target, the aircraft will simply advance towards the chosen direction. We can now choose the interval, length and speed of our move. The minimum interval is now 1 photo every 2 seconds, even with RAW files, which is excellent. I normally like to set the length of my hyperlapses at 12 seconds, which will require 10 minutes at an interval of a shot every 2 seconds. Finally, we set the speed, and I'm glad to notice that we can choose a speed as low as 0.1 meters per second. I like hyperlapses with a subtle movement of the aircraft, and here we have a wide choice of speed. This one is at the minimum speed of 0.1 meter per second, and it is not stabilized, but you can see that there is very little wobbling. After stabilizing, there is no warping of any kind, and this is an excellent performance from the Air 2S. As with the Mavic 2 and the Air 2, the elements in the foreground tended to move a little bit independently from the background. Every time I see photos or hyperlapses taken with the Air 2S, I'm always surprised by the beauty of the colors. The light conditions were horrible during the 2 days of shooting, but as you can see the results are more than decent. Another excellent news is that it's now possible to use the 2 sticks of the controller in course lock or in circle mode. It was not the case with the Mavic Air 2. Here I am descending while advancing and also very slightly moving closer to the target. These moves are to be made at very low speed, as any fast move will result in very abrupt results. The possibility to use the sticks during an hyperlapse is something I was looking forward to, but as we will see later, the waypoints mode has been improved a lot, and now these sort of moves are much easier to perform in waypoints with smoother results. Orbiting around the target is always an interesting way to discover a setting, either in video or in hyperlapses. Especially when there are elements in different planes, thus creating nice parallax effects. The settings are similar to those of course lock, but we don't have to specify the direction of flight. We set the target in the same way, then we choose the interval between each shot and the speed. Finally, we choose the direction, clockwise or counterclockwise. As in the course lock mode, we can now use the sticks of the remote controller to get closer or farther away from the target, or modify the altitude during the hyperlapse. But if we want to get a simple orbiting movement, this is the mode to use, as it is a move almost impossible to perfectly replicate using waypoints. The first iteration of waypoints, hyperlapses, appeared 3 years ago with the Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. Immediately I had the impression that this mode could be the best thing since sliced salami, the only mode needed for perfect hyperlapses. But as it is often the case for a first iteration, that version of waypoints needed still a lot of improvements. The aircraft had to travel at least 3 meters between each shot, which is a lot. To get a 10-second hyperlapses, a distance of 750 meters was needed from the first point to the last. This far exceeds the regulation about visual line of sight, and it is so far that I risk finding my drone in a different country. Also, the result was extremely fast-moving footage, which is fine once in a while, but not what we need on most occasions. With the Mavic Air 2 things improved, but the distance needed between each shot was still way too long. I have done a specific video about hyperlapses with the Mavic Air 2. Click on this link to watch it. Let's see if things have improved with the Air 2S. After choosing waypoints in the hyperlapse menu, we flag to the position where we want our hyperlapse to start, and position the camera in the desired direction. When we tap on the first of these icons on the left, the position of the drone, the altitude and the orientation of the camera will be stored. We can then move to the next point and do the same. If we want, we can add several points, although in most cases I prefer to use just 2 points or occasionally 3 for very precise and smooth results. In another icon we can choose normal or reversed. When we hit the red shutter icon in normal mode, the drone will fly to the first point and start taking pictures. If we choose reversed, it will start from the last point, thus saving battery life. During the whole process, Waypoint will handle the smooth transition between each point. As we will see later, it is possible to save each project so that we can easily perform the same hyperlapse in that location at different times of the day, in different light conditions or different seasons. In the first example, I perform a move similar to the one I made earlier on using course lock. I start the move pointing to the center of the village, which is to the left of the aircraft. I am at high altitude as I want to have the camera pointing down to avoid the sun which is just behind the village. I then move to the left of the village to frame it from the opposite side. I lower the altitude and move slightly farther away from the village. And I also move the camera slightly to the right of the village to frame Mount Etna. The resulting hyperlapse is smoother than the previous one. I can also save the settings if I want to reshoot the same move later on at night. Brilliant! A very interesting move for hyperlapses is to mimic a big crane, something that was not possible with the previous versions of Waypoint, because the minimum distance needed between each shot. Let's try it with the Air 2S. I would like to start the move by pointing down to these buildings in the village and then gradually move backward while descending, therefore revealing the front of the buildings and Mount Etna in the background. So I set 2 points and I noticed that due to the short distance between the points, I can only get a hyperlapse of 6 seconds, while I was hoping for 10 seconds. This is the result. The length is not what I wanted, but still much longer than what I could get with previous models. I am still very happy about it. Since I'm here, I can press the icon reverse to get the opposite hyperlapse. Let's try now a similar move, but this time with 2 points slightly further away from each other. This time I can reach 8 seconds of footage, and the result is again perfectly smooth. And once again, I'm very impressed with the quality of the colors, the Air 2S, as the last condition was horrid. Let's resume how the relationship between distance travel and speed of the aircraft works, as we don't have an option for speed in the waypoint menu. Let's assume that I want a final movie of 10 seconds. If the distance traveled is less than 150 meters, I will get a shorter movie. The shorter the distance, the shorter the movie. In case of longer distance, if I still choose 10 seconds, the speed of the drone during the shoot will be faster as the distance increases. Since I've saved one of my previous hyperlapses, I can now simply retrieve it, hit a button, and this is the result. I'm really loving doing hyperlapses with the Air 2S. Click on this icon to watch my video about motion blur in time-lapse and hyperlapses, the single most important factor to master to get excellent results. If you like this video, click on the like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss any of the exciting upcoming videos. Bye for now.